Okay, so just to show you all what nature looks like in a more urbanized space, I'm actually going to walk around my neighborhood. I live in the neighborhood that I grew up in, and I'm standing out in front of John Muir Junior High School, which is where I went to school. I believe I graduated in 1989. So I'm here on Branham Way. You're going to hear some cars go by. This is not the same as most of the other places where I show myself engaging with nature, but there is nature in our urban spaces. So I'm going to walk around today. I'm going to show you some places that are monumental to me, one being this school named after a very famous environmentalist, specifically to the state of California, who is actually very controversial. So in ES1, Intro to Environmental Studies, we will be talking about John Muir and his impacts on environmental history and how that is up for discussion these days. Along the way, I'm going to walk actually back towards where my parents live, which is east of here, and along the way I'm going to see what we find. Right in front of John Muir School we have some trees, and you can see, if you're familiar, there's a redwood tree, which is the one oddly with not the red leaves. That is a different tree next to me. So I'm going to go ahead and just start taking some pictures and video to show you all. Here we have the redwood tree. Let me get out from underneath there. There we go. Redwood trees, redwood trees, redwood trees. We're close. We also have a pine behind the sun here. And we have some oak trees and some western sycamore over there by the baseball field, it looks like. So there are some native species on the landscaping here. And then we have our standard ornamentals that have been brought in from elsewhere. Oftentimes these plants do not align with our environment, our local ecology. As many of you are aware, in California we suffer droughts, which are expected to increase. Oh, trash truck. We'll talk more about that later. I have a love of trash and recycling because of my past. As I was saying, a lot of these plants did not evolve in our local environment, so they actually require more water, which can be problematic because in California, we don't have a lot of water to spare for things like landscaping. And what you may notice, and I believe it was referenced in the video about San Jose water, there will be purple pipes at times. Let's see if we have any purple here. Nope. The purple indicates that the water is reclaimed, meaning it's gone through the wastewater treatment process. It is clean and usable, but we don't drink it. There's a negative connotation for people around drinking wastewater. So we use it for irrigation. I was right, this is a western sycamore. There's a row of them here. That's a native tree. I love the colors. The bark is beautiful. I think it's a great color palette for design. The colors are amazing. These I take a lot of pictures of because they typically occur in riparian areas, and riparian means next to a creek or river. They're really beautiful. There is no creek or river here. I believe they were planted as part of the landscaping plan for the college, if there was one. But did you know that that's a job? Landscaping architect. I have some friends that do that. So if any of you are interested in me inviting someone to our office hours, I would be more than happy to reach out. Guillermo is the person that I'm thinking of. Okay, what's interesting here, I noticed earlier, is that we have a lot of oak trees. So there's some oak trees along this line on Branham. And the way that I realized this is that I was looking down, which probably isn't a good thing for my neck, but I was looking at the ground, and along this area there were some acorns. And I can tell by the leaves that are on the ground. So just observing around you. In fact, if we look at over here in the gutter, where does that water go? We learned about, here's a little baby oak tree, just growing. I had a student once ask me while we were outside the building at De Anza why someone would plant a tree so close to a light pole, similar to what we see here. And I said, we didn't plant that. Nature did that. Here are the acorns. See them? And some leaves. This looks like a coast live oak leaf, although when I look up, that doesn't seem to be what I see. So that leaf right there that's curled might just be that way because of drying out. And the reason why I say that is the coast live oak leaf looks like one of those chips. I took a picture so I can show you. The chips, the corn chips that you can use to eat dip. Here's some more. It's all over. Acorns and leaves. So maybe there is a coast live oak here. Maybe this is a coast live oak right here. This one. I think this one is. See, and you can't tell looking at these trees. What I could tell from a distance is they're oak trees. But to get them to species, like I'm saying this one is potentially a coast live oak, that actually requires more than just looking at them from afar. But here's another one just growing. I hope they don't cut these. Oaks are very hard to identify to species. I took a botany class out at San Jose State with an amazing instructor whose name I cannot remember at this moment. He had his doctorate degree in botany, and his doctoral dissertation was on oak trees, and he would not identify them to species because they hybridize so much. So it's very difficult to get them that far. And when we go out in the field, it was pretty interesting to see him say that he wouldn't identify them to species because a lot of people, that's how you can be showy in biology, by claiming you know scientific names of things. It's an interesting world. Okay, we're gonna keep walking. I'm gonna take you to the river over here. So as I walk over to the Guadalupe across the street, I'm at the corner of Almaden Expressway and Branham. And I just did seek on some of the plants here along the walk. And what I wanted to point out is something that we call diversity. Now, I think most of you are familiar with that term in a non-environmental ecological sense. But if we're looking at the diversity here in the landscaping, you can tell that there's some plants that are the same. So for instance, in front of us on the left, we have some sunflower family. I know that because I used my Seek app. And then we have either grasses or maybe the lilies that we saw earlier, and some other grasses, different species of grasses. So right here I see about 3 different species without the trees. So that's 4 in this little parcel. Now, that's could be considered a high diversity compared relatively to something else, or it could be considered low. Let's just make note of that. I do see one other flower over there. It's very common, although I do not know the name. Actually am not good with non-native. Oh yeah, is that a century cactus possibly? I don't know my introduced plants. So okay, we're gonna go. Here we go. Okay, so I am actually right now at Branham Lane and Guadalupe River. I am going to show you some of the things that I've seen since I walked over here just across the street. But I have to flip the camera around, so it'll be just a second. I came by this creek. That's what we called it, the creek. Every day I would walk to John Muir from my parents' house. They live more this way. So my interaction with our local watershed and our local creek and river system was basically walking past this, as I did for 3 years to go to school. It was always fenced off. You can see there's a fence, although there is a hole in the fence right there, because now it's used a lot for homeless. At that time, I don't recall it being as problematic as it is now. And the reason why the homeless population is problematic in our creeks is because of the garbage, which I'm going to show you. So this is an interesting intersection between the environment and society, which is one of the areas of environmental studies and sustainability. This is a problem here in our area because of the cost of living. You all, I'm sure, are very aware of how expensive and how difficult it is to survive here. So what has happened now is our homeless population goes to the edges of our creeks and rivers, and the waste that is produced by them is not collected by any part of the city on a regular basis. So it accumulates, and then when we get storm surges or big water events, or even just winds, it can carry a lot of the waste into the river. So I'm going to show you what I see now when I flip the camera around. Okay, I just turned the camera around, didn't even move. What you can see here is there is a hole in the fence. This is Water District land, Valley Water. Remember, we learned about them in the story map about where do our resources come from. Something I want to point out to you that I saw every day as I walked by here was this sign, which looks like it hasn't been updated since then. So the fish in the Guadalupe River, as well as other riparian areas, riparian zones in the Bay Area, are contaminated with mercury. And the reason why this specific river is contaminated is because if we went upstream that direction, the Guadalupe actually drains what is the former Almaden quicksilver mercury mines. What I wanted to show here is this substantial cut into the side of accumulated soil It looks like over time, because there was such little water, there was an accumulation of soil and vegetation on this kind of hillside. And what we can see here is how powerful the water is when it comes through, because it has created basically a cave. Oh, there's a mallard in there. See, local wildlife. There's a mallard duck. It's swimming away. There, you can see it. There's a lot of these trees are native, a lot of them are not, because another thing that gets carried down into our waterways is seeds of the plants that we landscape with. And so they can start growing anywhere if the conditions are right. Here we have a huge western sycamore back there, the tallest one. We have an oak tree, and in front of the oak tree is a California walnut. Here's another oak tree, just two of them it looks like. So what I can see right here is a shopping cart, and also some other material under there. Now the water looks low right now, but I will tell you that when it was, you can hear the ducks, when it was heavily raining in the last year, the water got very high, which is how that cut in the side over there happened. Okay, I'm back on the other side of the fence where I originally started, and you can see there's garbage. I'm actually filming through the fence, and you can also see that there's a water line. That's pretty cool. I think that's new. I'm gonna have to pay attention to that during the rainy season. There's another shopping cart. We can only see part of what's underneath there, and I know if you go past towards Almaden, there are many homeless encampments. There's the couch over there that we could see, and here's the hole in the fence. I am not going to go back there. I really want to, because I want to see the natural aspects, but I just don't think it's safe. It's illegal. I do have permission. I have permits at times which allow me to go into these spaces. It's a document from the Valley Water District that states I have permission to go onto their sites for environmental purposes. However, at this time I do not have one, so I'm not going in there. In addition, I do not feel like this is a safe space for me to go explore, which is why when I go to public paths where I feel safe, even when I'm doing my environmental work. You don't have to go way out of an urban space to engage with the environment. You can actually walk out your door and see plants fighting to get through the concrete. So I want you all to kind of, think about that. And then also think about, what if fences around our urban spaces like this? Why do I have to travel to get access to open space? This is, kind of dense urban space, urban, suburban. I think it's kind of in between. But should our spaces be fenced off? Shouldn't this be accessible? There's a trail back there. Looks like it. So does that create inaccessibility to open spaces that the public could benefit from? My whole childhood, I heard about how this was going to open up into a path that would connect to Lake Almaden and downtown San Jose. It has never happened. So, I don't know, maybe in my lifetime. Okay, I'm back at the Sprouts parking lot, and that was just on my little adventure down the street to show you all. I see some more trees. Oops, they're behind me. There's some other species of trees, so we could add to that 4 if we wanted to do a count. We could do a species richness of the landscaping at Sprouts and count all of them. That would be actually a good activity to do. Do a comparison between a landscaped commercial property or residential versus a plot out in an open space in nature of similar size. I'm gonna head into Sprouts and get some groceries and then walk home so that I can get this all ready for you all today. Take care. So along the street, you may notice, no matter where you are, well, maybe not in the United States, elsewhere, a lot of urbanized cities have these drains. These drains drain, this one specifically, to the Guadalupe. So that means that the water that goes down these drains in the street that accumulates leaves from the gutter goes directly to the river, which drains into our bay. Depending on where you are, your waterway will drain to possibly a different place. But this is why it's problematic when we apply pesticides and fertilizers, and we're not supposed to dump oil and other hazardous materials into our storm drains because they do not go to the wastewater treatment plant. That is way too much volume of water for the wastewater treatment plant to handle. And oftentimes when you see wastewater facilities that fail and sewage is released into whatever body of water typically that's nearby, the reason is because the sewer systems, oftentimes, that being the one that comes out of our house, the pipes run underneath the streets and they leak, and so water can get into them, and then you have water that's coming from our natural watershed that's not necessarily human used or dirty in that sense, getting into that system and then overwhelming the system so that there's failure. I'll try to find some articles to show examples of that.